Hello, everybody. This is SHC TV. Welcome. I am Secondhand Coke, and we are here today to discuss the infamous Prince Harry BBC interview after his glorious loss in court. What was it, yesterday? No, just today. Man, the world just moves by so quickly, doesn't it? See how many other cliches I can put into this program. Do me a favor right now and go ahead and adjust the speed to your preference and the volume and all those things that you can set on videos so that you don't feel like you're waiting for me to speed up my talking or slow it down or anything that makes it easier for you to understand. And I'll be sure to try to set up the captions. Let me know if the captions don't appear because I feel like I'm doing it every time and then something happens and it's not showing up. And so I feel like that's probably my fault somewhere round and about that way. But I can't know unless you let me know. So if that happens and you can't see closed captions, let me know in the comments so that I can fix those. Okay, well, let's get started. I hope you guys enjoy this graphic as much as I do. I just had so much fun with it. Hopefully, it's enough to get around the copyright when it comes to the pictures. Anyway, I did try to go about this wherein I cut in video of from the interview itself and just kind of did a reaction video, but it was just too cumbersome and I was saying the same things over and over again. And so I'm just going to do a little bit of commentary on a screen and then move on from there. So one thing that has always kind of perplexed me with the Markles is the extent to which Harry is actually crazy and the extent to which Meghan has driven him crazy. So, you know, watching the royal family for the past 30 years or so, I was probably old enough to have some interest in it when I was 15, 16 years old. So for the past 30 years or so, I'm not going to act like I'm Harry in this interview and that I've been serving the British country for 35 years, even though he spent at least a good 4 or 5 of those years shitting on himself, literally. But yeah, I've been a royal watcher. That's how I got interested in this whole show here with Harry and Meghan. And even back going to Harry's childhood, there was always kind of this undercurrent that things weren't quite right with Harry, that he was emotionally and intellectually off in some way. And I'm starting to think that that was to the point of disability, just watching him try to process things here. Now, the thing about narcissistic abuse is that it drives you crazy. That is one of the things that they do, that is crazy making behavior. They rewrite your entire history. They isolate you so that you're all by yourself and you can't, make any kind of can't fact check anything. You feel like you've been totally marooned someplace and you're shipwrecked and you don't have anywhere to go and your entire world is now based on this entirely new landscape. And you have to think about this is that Harry was especially, once she did this, he was especially vulnerable, more than most people would be, because he was so sheltered being brought up anyway. Now, have I heard the rumors that Harry's personality, the hero Harry, was largely a lampoon job by Harry's PR? Yeah, I've heard that. To an extent, here's the thing. Harry and Meghan were mad because the palace refused to shine up their image. So what was going on was that bad PR was getting out because Meghan was behaving badly. And at the beginning, it was just Meghan behaving badly and Harry taking her side and saying whatever Meghan wants, Meghan gets. That's how this started, before Harry himself started behaving badly. And so, no, I think to the extent that PR is used and that the royal family is as much about image as anything, that, to some extent that's true, but I don't think Harry was an abusive criminal. I think he was a mean kid. I think he has been just selfish and coddled and pampered and, made to think that everything he does when he does do something is a big deal, and that he believes a certain myth about himself. But I don't think that the palace did a complete shine up job to, essentially convert a Jack the Ripper type character into, Harry the hometown hero. I don't think what happened. Meghan does play a huge role in what Harry is doing and how he's behaving and how he sees this situation. And you can see it within this interview. You can tell this man is so discombobulated. He doesn't know whether to shit or go sailing. He just, half the time he said, "Oh, I don't want to fight anymore, and I don't want to have any more disagreements or go to the courts anymore. I just want to be done with this and to have a reconciliation." But then the other part of the time he's like, "Well, my family threw me under a double-decker bus and they're trying to kill my wife and children." I mean, those are some extreme viewpoints there. And I, I come down different ways when it comes to what extent Harry got crazy on his own and what extent he's been driven there by a very capable narcissist. So, one of my questions that maybe you could offer feedback on is, to what extent was Harry already a nut job when Meghan got there? And to what extent did she drive him there? Like, there are times when I think, yeah, Megan is driving this bus. And then there are other times I'm like, well, maybe he was backing into the parking place already and she just kind of straightened it up for him. Like, it's hard to tell. But one thing that is true is that this interview is unhinged, and it starts right back at the production values of it. If you look at it, it looks like it was shot in someone's college dorm room, or first apartment. Like maybe it's at not caught, and that, I mean, that's as much a possibility as anything, I guess. But I don't know. But where it's shot is interesting, and it's BBC. It's a woman with an American accent who's conducting the interview, because Harry has a go at her saying data instead of data, or whatever the hell way it goes. I don't know anymore. But so another thing is they did not give the palace any more than an hour of lead time that this was coming out. So that in and of itself is unprofessional and unseemly. And it also, it belies the argument that, if Palace has all of this control over PR and media and how Harry appears, then how come they're only getting, an hour to kind of prepare for a lambasting such as this, where, Harry's doing vigilante drive-by guerrilla interviews on the BBC. Another thing that I kind of learned from this is that while I have enjoyed a lot of BBC programming in my life, dear God, British TV shows are my favorite. my especial favorites are The Vicar of Dibley and Faulty Towers. Those two. Um, but God, as a news station, I mean this is pretty much put Harry in some Kohl mascara, and this is the Martin Bashir interview right there. It's just a blindsided, seedy, weirdly timed, shady news organization to me, it seems like. And I see that more here than in other interviews that I've seen given. Like Tom Bradby's ITV interview, and I'm talking about the one that he gave when Harry was doing his book tour. Tom Bradby pushed back a little bit. You know, he was like, you said you called your family racist. No, the British media did that, the tabloids, and people quoted the tabloid. I mean, that's something Harry goes on and on about in this interview here is people think my security costs $20 million and it doesn't. It only costs $1 million. And people will quote these figures and then they just make themselves look ignorant because those aren't the correct figures. And I just want to say, Harry, so do you want to know what else is an incorrect figure? Your wife going into the news and saying constantly that you guys made a $100 million Netflix deal, because you absolutely for sure did not do that. You didn't make nearly $100 million, not even in the range. You didn't even break into 2-digit millions in terms of what you took home if you reported the way that you should have. Now, we all know the likelihood of you being up and up with your finance records is pretty unlikely, but that is speculation. Notice I'm not quoting anything on that. So yeah. So another thing pointing to Harry just being absolutely insane is that his mother was known to be incredibly paranoid and emotional to a fault. And as we have gotten more of a story out, we have found that it wasn't the palace doing a Princess Diana campaign. Diana was running that campaign. So, that also undercuts any argument that they were trying to clean up Harry's reputation, because they didn't do it for Diana, and they were always 2 steps behind her, it would seem, when it came to press manipulation, just as they have been since Meghan Markle came on the scene. So I think I don't like Harry. I've never liked Harry. I never thought, oh, Harry's a hero. But I think he came into a place, and this is supported by Spare as much as anything, that around his late 20s to up until he met Meghan, he had kind of come into a place where he was functioning well enough. And the guy just wanted a family. That's my final piece when it comes to just how much of the sinister component of the Harry Meghan show, how much of it is facilitated by her and how much is facilitated by him, is that when we look at this, what does Harry wanted a family. He wanted a wife and he wanted kids. And she didn't want a husband or kids. They were a means to an end. And I think we can all agree with that pretty factually. Now, we can probably maybe disagree with the extent to which Harry wanted a family, but I don't think that he went into his relationship with Meghan intending to get rid of his own family. In fact, there is in part of the engagement interview where Harry says, I'm just looking forward to Meghan joining and being another member of the team. And the look that crosses Meghan's face at that point in time is just hazardous. It's just like, oh my God, a member of the team. I'm not part of a team unless I'm trying to suck up to Serena Williams at some kind of and make it look like I do charity. Oh my God, what are you talking about? So, yeah, the extent to which all this is Meghan's fault versus all this is Harry's fault, be that what it may, I think we can all agree that this interview that he gave was as heartless and as cruel and as mean as he has shown himself to be. And he did it all by himself. Do I think he set up the interview? No, don't think he did that, but he willfully gave it, and he obviously has an axe to grind. And he doesn't seem to understand what it is, but he just knows that he has it. So one thing that he continually goes over is this screening about how much of a security risk you present or your situation puts you in. So how much security will you need? And he says that in 2020 I was right at the top, and the only one who needed more security than I did was the Queen. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Is he talking about the YouGov popularity polls? Because I remember there being a popularity poll done where Harry was always second most popular up to the Queen. But also, if he wants to know when that hat changed and what changed that, those polls have continually been done. And what changed that was that he married a snake, and nobody likes her, and nobody likes him with her. And now, because him with her is apparently showing more of his true colors, nobody likes him anymore either. And if he wants the big mystery uncovered about what happened between that poll and then they deciding, oh, we don't need to do the test anymore to see what kind of risk I have now. So, you know, I don't know what the man is talking about. Is he talking about just a YouGov poll? Surely he is not that stupid. If not, then the other explanation is that they stopped assessing his risk when he stopped working for the family. And I'm sorry, in what world are you protecting your family by escaping your 24-hour cushy job with, MI5 elite protection to go to LA and work for Netflix? In what universe is going to LA where toddlers are packing heat alongside their sandwiches in their Mr. Kool-Aid Man lunchboxes? How, in what world is it safer there in LA than in the UK? I want someone to ask that. So we're getting into questions that I wish reporters would ask. Another question I wish they would ask is, stand by. Okay, another big question that I'd like Harry to be asked, because he clearly has never been asked this, and most of us start being asked this question, very early in life, because we start to come up towards injustices a lot earlier. And Harry and Meghan have clearly never in their precious little lives been told no, because all this is him saying, well, this is not fair. It's not fair. And I'm like, what makes you think it is supposed to be fair? I wish a reporter would ask that. Well, Harry, when did you get the idea that life was fair? Do you think it's fair that there are orphans in Lesotho who have parents who have died from the AIDS crisis because they can't get access to proper medicine while you get to play Xbox in your room and avoid the therapy and the resources that are thrown at you to try to help you heal from the death of your own mother, while these kids are just through lack of resource left for the birds? Is that fair? Or, is it fair that Megan gets to leave refugee camps to go walk on red carpets? When has Megan walked on an actual red carpet is one question, but I mean, fair. This is it's a classic childhood argument. Things are not fair, and sometimes you get things not because you're born and you're entitled to it. It's the definition of entitlement going on here. Things happen because you don't work for them. Why does he think he is entitled to something he refuses to work for? And he says, that's the stupidest argument I've heard anyone offer. Why should I have to work for what I was born into? You weren't born into the hot seat. Harry was not born into the hot seat. He wasn't, he's not going to be king. His children aren't going to be, threatened. In fact, the only one in the family who has been threatened at gunpoint is Princess Anne. And she's the one you don't hear complain, explain ever. But these are questions I have. I mean, these are things that I think would be very, very interesting to hear him try to rally a response to. Another question I would like to hear a reporter ask Harry is, how has Meghan made his life better? Aside from his two children, which he doesn't even call by their names ever, he doesn't even call them by my children. He calls them their my father's grandchildren or something like that. Um, yeah, the king's grandchildren. That's what he calls them. Um, Other than potentially the children, how is he any better off now than he was when he met this cow 6 years ago, married her 6 years ago? 6, 7, I don't know. How is he any better off? He's lost his job. He's lost one of his legacy charities with Centabale because he's been out dicking around, filing lawsuits on people, trying to get security and causing his own security risk in the process, revealing the interiors of the palace, part of which are what keep people safe and secure. Talking about in a book about his brother's circumcision. All this stuff that Harry has done to compromise their security. How is he safer now than he was then? How is he more financially secure now than he was then? How is he more liked now than he was then? How are his relationships now better than they were then? What has this woman done other than tear down everything, every pillar that stood in his life? I'd like to hear him answer that. I know what he would do. He'd get flustered up and get mad and start, that's the stupidest question I've ever heard in all my days. And I've been serving this family for 35 years. And every turd I put into a diaper that my nanny had to clean up because it took me an extra long time to potty train, you see. was in service to my country, and now I say, there. Anyway, those are some of my thoughts about this particular interview. Um, just the unseemliness of the BBC, the who is crazier, Harry or Meghan? Um, what is why all those questions that I wish that the press would ask him instead of what they end up do asking him, why people think that the palace has all this control over the media when they can't stop any of these drive by interviews that Harry gives, right after a court decision happens. And I just, those are my thoughts and those are my feelings. And I was kind of, thought I'd throw them out there on the internet and see what yours might be. So, with all that being said, thank you very much for joining me today. Next time, I swear, and I swear it will be in a couple of days, if not today, I will put out that damn review for episode freaking 7 of With Love, Megan, because I'm going to keep messing around and procrastinating, and then Netflix is going to go and shoot out the next 8 episodes, and then I'm going to be even more behind than I am now, and looking down the barrel of that gun. That's not what I want to be doing. So yeah, and then we'll take up again with the book about Lady C wrote, and just continue to take Harry and Meghan news as it comes. Lord knows there's always plenty of it to talk about. So please do remember to like, subscribe, and share your feedback in the comments. And I will see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye bye.